The following program is produced by PAC TV in accordance with the agreements PAC TV has with the towns we serve. The content of this program does not reflect the views or opinions of the PAC TV staff or board of directors.
Welcome to Healthy Kingston. I'm Janet Wade. Today's program is going to focus on some of the major health issues that are impacting Plymouth County and particular Kingston during this time of the pandemic. Our health agent, Arthur Boyle, will be here as usual, updating us on the state of the town. And then we're very fortunate to have two people, experts, professionals who work at Hope Floats, our local healing and wellness center in Kingston, who will be speaking to all of our mental health status here during the pandemic, things that we can be doing, be adults, seniors, children, teens, to create a good and happy time for us and look back on this time not just with regrets, but with good things that we have done for ourselves and enhancing our way of life. And then also observations on abnormal behavior and when people should be seeking treatment and sources of treatment in our community. So we have a very full program today. So first, our health agent, Arthur Boyle.
Hi, we want to talk first of all about the high level that we're at and we're seeing here in Kingston for the Kripalu virus. We've got posters around town and, giving a reminder in the COVID-19, era that we're living in. People tend to forget a little bit about the danger of Kripalu, but there have been, I believe it was 4 cases in Plymouth County in the recent past. So we can't fall asleep on this, we've got COVID-19 to deal with. There have been some cases in some local restaurants have had a couple of issues, and one of our fitness groups has had an issue, and we really are trying to get everybody to play smart and play by the rules. And you hear Governor Charlie Baker making statements like, if we all wear masks and if we all do the things that they say to do, that we'll be fine and we'll continue to have the numbers drop. And I would agree with him. I think he's done a good job in, bringing out the danger, but also the solution, or part of the solution. And we'll just play it by ear as time marches on. We will have information available on the town webpage. The best place to look is there, because we get phone calls, so many that you can't get back to everybody as much as you try. There's always an issue going on, and we do the best we can to inform the public, and
right.
That's what our job is. So
right. Speaking of which, I know you've received a number of calls about Halloween. Can you speak to the residents as far as how the...
I knew you would bring that up. I was having too easy a time.
I know.
The official position of the Board of Health is that we aren't really taking a position. We're leaving it up to the good sense of the parents to bring your child, to some familiar houses if you're so inclined. But what we really, are pushing, and it came up with Heidi Whipple, a member of the board, talking about having small house parties and things that, you're going to be wearing a mask anyway, given that it's Halloween. And I think she's right on the mark that, you can have a small house party for your immediate neighbors and, not violate any laws as long as you keep your distance. I think it's a good idea. I don't think this is the time to be standing on street corners and advocating for your right to have Halloween.
All righty. Well, thank you, Arthur. Appreciate it. And for your usual update. And I know you and Kathy Ivers have been very busy addressing health issues. So thank you for all you do for the town.
Well, you're welcome, and we enjoy doing it. It's it's part of a calling, I guess. But we're doing the best we can, and it's overwhelming, to be perfectly honest with you.
I bet. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
Take care. The world faces substantial challenges in meeting the demands for mental health care, and that was the issue before COVID. But with the havoc caused by the pandemic and the impending impact, or not even impending, it's here now, on our economics, on our social structure, including businesses and our schools, our healthcare system, this is now a global healthcare crisis. And not only globally, but certainly nationally. And we're going to be looking locally what the impact is on the mental health of the residents here in the Kingston, Plymouth County area. Very fortunate to have a local expert with us here today. Maureen Walsh is a psychiatric nurse practitioner as well as a grief therapist and educator. She has a private practice called Grief Weavers, where she sees people of all ages who are grieving. She has a practice that's associated with Whole Floats, which, as many of you probably know, is a local healing and wellness center in Kingston. And at Whole Floats, she facilitates the sibling loss group, as well as Mike's Club, which is a peer support group for children ages 5 to 18. She's also a member of HEART, H-E-A-R-T, the Whole Floats Education Awareness Response Team, whose goal is to raise awareness about grief through education and community outreach. So needless to say, she comes with tremendous credentials, a lot of experience. And so with that, would like Ms. Walsh to talk just a little bit about Hope Floats, a little bit more to her role at Hope Floats, and then we'll get into more of her expertise and suggestions she might have for all of us in dealing with mental health, all of our mental health during this very precarious time.
Okay. Hope Floats is just this amazingly beautiful healing place. It was started by Ken and Denise Brack 11 years ago, after they had the tragic loss of their son Michael in a car accident. And they wanted to provide a safe, loving, healing place where people who are grieving can heal. Many times people who are grieving, their well-meaning friends and family will say, you need to go see a psychiatrist, or you need to go see someone. And Denise, I remember when I first met her, said, I wasn't mentally ill. I was devastated. I didn't need to go into a clinical place. I needed someone to walk with me in my grief, who was trained, obviously, but walked with me. And so they bought this old colonial farmhouse, did it all over. They've added this amazing, they call it the barn. Let me tell you, this is the most beautiful barn you've ever seen. And we have 7 therapists there who have their own private practices. We each have our own practice where we see people of all ages. And then we all pitch in and help run the support groups. And there are so many support groups. We have support groups for child loss, suicide loss of a loved one who has died of suicide, drug loss. We have I do a sibling loss for people about 20 to 40 who have lost a sibling. I love doing that. We have Mike's Club, which is our children's support group. And last year before COVID, we had almost 60 kids in it. And we meet twice a month with the kids and a parent or guardian. We have a big pizza dinner, and then we break off into groups with trained facilitators, and we do a different topic each week. And while we're doing that, the guardians or parents are down in the living room having their own support group. It's a vital part of Hope Floats.
But with all of that said, we're all going through a tremendous amount of mental health issues in dealing with the pandemic. And certainly there are those groups that are even more affected. The elderly who may have pre-existing, or just people who have pre-existing issues, who have compromised immune systems, who are having to isolate, quarantine, feel very much on their own. Children who are having to deal with maybe the stress, anxiety of their parents, hybrid classes, online classes, going to school but still very nervous, wearing masks. The impact on teens, they can't socialize to the degree that maybe they would like to, or they're putting themselves in very threatening circumstances. Impact on young people who want to be socially active, and it's definitely doing a real number on them emotionally. So we're all affected in one way, shape, or form. And that's why I felt that it would be really important to talk to Maureen and get a better idea as to maybe how we can personally handle these situations. So Maureen, first, children, how would you, what would you say parents should be, or caregivers should be keeping in mind as far as children during this time?
So I'm an optimist. So that kind of underplays all my work. But I think that kids, for the most part, are much more resilient than we give them credit for. And I think that they absorb the tension in the house so quickly. They're like a sponge, right? And now with cell phones and everything, you can never have a private conversation. I can remember taking the old phone and going into the bathroom and closing the door so my mom couldn't hear, but you can't do that with cell phones anymore, right? They're all over the house. So I think we explain to kids, this is a hard time for everybody, literally around the world. This is not just Massachusetts, it's not just Plymouth, it's not Weymouth, this is the world. And we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through. How are we going to get through it? We're going to get through it together. So, yep, it's awful, and let's make a list. I'm a big list maker. Let's make, every time we say, I wish we could, let's make a list so that when COVID is over, we can go through that list. So if you want to have, I wish I could go to the beach, or I wish I could go to the movies, let's put that on the list. That gives them something to do. We're all better when we have something to do. There's also, and I'm just going to skip for a second to the elderly. It's really important that we help to connect as safely as we can with those in our neighborhood that are hurting. And the elderly and the immunocompromised, the people that can't come out really are. So what better way than to say to your kids, let's be porch bandits. I saw this term the other day in the paper. I thought it was great. Make a batch of cookies, make a card, doesn't matter what. And let's go and drop it over at Mrs. Smith's door. And we'll drop it on the porch. We'll wear our masks. We'll ring the bell. We'll step back so we're 6 feet away. And when she comes to the door, we're just going to say, hey, Mrs. Smith, we know you're alone. We wanted to share this with you. And let's do that. So when you give kids things to do, it makes a whole different world. Going back to kids, let's make a scrapbook of COVID. So someday you're going to sit and tell your grandparents, when I was growing up, my parents went through the Depression, and my grandparents went through the Depression and World War I, and we heard those stories. We were raised on those. Well, you're going to be able to tell your kids about COVID. So let's take some pictures and let's write some stories and let's learn some new things. I've never made bread. Let's make bread today. Or let's have a Monopoly game that goes on for weeks. Let's do things together. We're going to get through this. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be frustrated. So let's have some outlets for that. If you have a yard you can run around, if it's not safe to run around anywhere else, have your kids run around. See how many times they can go around the yard. If you have clay, have them pound the clay. Have them pound a pillow when they get angry. It's fine to feel this way. I'm not saying to be a Pollyanna that, oh my goodness, everything is fine. It isn't. It stinks. It stinks. I can't wait for this to be over. But there's things we can do to get through this. And when we get through this, Michelle Norris, who is a NPR facilitator, perhaps is the word, host, she said, let's not go back to where we were. Let's go back to better. And so when this is over, you can say to your kids, look at this. It was nasty. We hated virtual school, but we helped Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones. We learned how to make things. We made this great scrapbook. We're a better person now because the way we came through COVID.
Oh, those are great ideas. And certainly a lot of those can follow through with teens, but is there anything particularly you want to say to address teenagers?
Yeah,
right?
Teens, it's really hard. My heart breaks for the teens, it really does. So, at developmentally, teens are at an age where they're supposed to be gradually learning independence from their parents, and right at this time where emotionally they're supposed to be, associating really big with their friend group. all of a sudden they're slammed back into the household. And let's be truthful, having 2 or 3 kids virtual learning, 2 parents trying to do their jobs, all crammed into a house is not easy. So the biggest thing I think that teens have, we have to pitch the same thing. Okay, it's a pandemic. We all have to pitch in. This is horrible. I feel terrible that you can't have soccer and can't go to the prom and can't do everything you want to do, but we can't help it. This is the way it is. So how can we get through this the best? I think make sure they have access to their friends in whatever way is safe. You know, can you do a fire pit in your backyard where they can come and stay 6 feet apart and have masks and have Purell there? You know, if they can't do that, can they go for a walk, 6 feet apart? Can you trust them? Let's use the technology as best we can. Let's get them on the Zoom calls. Let them be on their friends. What we don't want them to do is just playing the video game by themselves 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's not how I want them to use technology. I want them to use the technology to connect. All right. And this is another time. Is there something you've always wanted to do? Have you ever wanted to paint, but you didn't want to show your friends you were painting? All right, now you can do it because your friend's on here. Have you ever wanted to write a song? Have you ever wanted to learn an instrument? This is the time we can do it. God bless YouTube. It can teach us how to do anything. So let's try and do that so that when this is over, you didn't waste 2 years of your life. You used it to grow.
Exactly. Adults, those of us in the middle here.
Yes. And perhaps we have the hardest part, right? Because many of people our age are taking care of parents, okay, and that's so hard because can you go see them? Or is it safe? Are they in your bubble? And you're taking care of kids, and by the way, you're trying to work and pay your mortgage, and this is really, really difficult. So you need to carve out little tiny increments of time for yourself. And I know that's very, very hard, but I'm talking start 5 minutes. And usually by this time in life, you have something that you do to decompress. So is it 5 minutes of music? Is it 5 minutes of running around the backyard? Is it 5 minutes of yoga? Is it 5 minutes of punching a punching bag? I'm great on having a punching bag in your house if you can, and punch the heck out of it as long as it's safe. Is it 5 minutes for a cup of tea? Is it 5 minutes to go to the bathroom and just sit there with your cup of tea and just sit and look out the window where your kids think you're taking a shower, but you're really just sitting right on the top of that toilet seat and you're having your cup of tea.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I think that's really important. I think recognizing how much you're doing is important. Hey, look at me. I'm taking care of 3 kids, 2 that have IEPs, which makes life very difficult trying to do virtual schooling when you have kids that have special needs. That's a really critical area. I'm taking care of my mom and dad. All right. And by the way, they're divorced. So that's 2 households I have to get to, and I'm trying to keep my house from falling down. So let's recognize what you're doing and let's say, okay, how do you want to be better when this is over? Right. How do you want to say, man, it was hard, but we did it. And none of us killed each other. We did it. So, and my husband.
And hopefully there weren't any divorces going on either.
Exactly. Well,
what about the elderly?
Yeah. The elderly is a part that, they're so overlooked anyways. I have been surprised at some of my patients, who have lived alone very well and coped very well. And all of a sudden COVID hits and it's really, really hard. So again, that human connection that we all need, they need more than ever, and they need that they can help. So, nothing takes you out of the doldrums better than helping someone else. So if you have your mother and you say, Ma, the kids would love to hear from you. Can I show you how to do this? Can I show you FaceTime, Zoom, blah, blah, blah. Yesterday on the news, there was a 91-year-old professor who has never retired. And he is doing his classic lectures, their lectures on the classics, forget what college it is, on Zoom. And they showed him. And I was like, yes, age doesn't have to do anything about it. Aging is inevitable. Growing old is an option. That's how I look at life. So let's get our elderly, let's get them to do something. If they knit, if they crochet, there's people that need blankets. There's always homeless. All right. Pets, shelters need those little blankets that you can tie. If you can't do something, and just because you're 85 doesn't mean you absolutely have to know how to knit, there's other things you can do. You can send a card to someone. Get a phone chain going. Remember we used to have phone chains when people weren't feeling well. I would call Mary and say, Mary, John needs help. And Mary would call Betty and she'd say, John needs help. And it would go around, well, let's do that with the elderly.
Mhm.
Let's get them calling each other. Let's teach them Zoom.
Great suggestions. So, wonderful suggestions of how to stay somewhat normal.
Yes.
What should people be identifying as abnormal behavior and when they need to seek treatment for themselves, a family member, a child, a senior?
Okay. So if you think of behavior, it's on a big, long spectrum, right? So I generally think the red flags pop up on either end of the spectrum. So let's go sleeping, okay? Some people, you have your normal amount of sleep. One of the classic signs, for instance, of depression, despite COVID, regardless of COVID, is someone who sleeps way too much. So that means that the sleeping has gone from the middle of the spectrum where it is a normal, 6 to 8 hours a night. And all of a sudden you've got someone who cannot get out of bed in the morning. Now, we all have days when we want to stay in bed and pull the covers over our head, but if that is going to be a continuous thing over 2 to 3 weeks, the red flag pops up. And I would say, okay, someone needs to call the doctor on that person and say, hey, let me tell you what's going on. What do you think? All right. Now, on the other end, someone who can't sleep anymore. Now, we all know people who can get by on 4 hours of sleep. I would like to know what they eat so I could learn to do that. But regardless, someone who all of a sudden they can't sleep at all. And we're talking kids and we're talking grownups of any age. If that's a continuous thing, not just a one night thing, you want to call the doctor and run that by the doctor or the healthcare provider, whoever they see. The same thing with eating, right? We're all eating too much. They call it COVID-19, not because of the name, but because of the weight they're all gaining, eating, making that bread that I talked about. But if someone can't stop eating, okay, I was putting on a tremendous amount of weight, again, that red flag should pop up. But then someone who has stopped eating, look at the elderly. Are they having access to good food? Are they getting deliveries? They don't know how to do maybe all the different food delivery services on the phone. So maybe they're just getting by on canned food day in and day out, so why? So that's why you want to run it by. The red flags don't mean that something is necessarily wrong. To me, red flags are, hey, it's like a stop sign. Let's stop and let's look at everything. All right. Stop sign doesn't mean you turn the car off, right? Stop sign says you stop, you look around, you make sure that there's no one's coming, that it's safe, and you move. So the same thing with behavior. We all are going to lose our temper more, okay? Any kind of violence, the red flag pops up. Okay, so you might be yelling at your kids a little bit more. They may be yelling at you. You and your partner may be yelling at each other. Yelling's not a good thing. I prefer not to have it in any relationship. But if it escalates to any kind of physical violence or verbal violence, all right, that's very big. You want the red flag up. You want to get some help. All right.
Righty. Those are all wonderful suggestions and really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Maureen. I mean, I've learned a lot, and I'm certainly going to practice at home and certainly with my grandchildren, trying to keep them away from video games and all the rest of it during this time, and keep them on task and on a routine. So thank you very much. And certainly keep Hope Floats in your thoughts if you having experienced any mental health issues and also grief issues. You're a real asset to our community. Thank you so much.
Janet, one quick thing I just wanted to add. All of our groups are still going on at Hope Floats, but they're going on virtual. Okay. And they are all no charge. So all the support groups I talked about, there is no charge. So okay. Just so that people understand that if you're having problems, don't wait till COVID is over. Give us a call at Hope Floats and we'll get you some help.
That's wonderful to know.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Janet.
Take care. Okay.
Bye now.
By way of further discussion on mental health during the pandemic, I would now like to introduce you to Clair Manganello, who is as well also a registered nurse and a yoga teacher certified through the Kripalu Center, and she has been since 2007. She has an extensive background in several different types of restorative yoga, radiant child yoga, divine sleep yoga, and gentle yoga. And she is also employed at Hope Floats Healing and Wellness Center. So with all that said, Claire, if you could give us some tips on mindfulness and stress reduction during this time of the pandemic that we can all use regardless of our age, that would be very helpful.
Well, the mindfulness is just, it's being in the present moment. And in doing that in a way that you are aware of your thoughts, your feelings, and sensations, but without any judgment. And it's not always easy to do, but it's worth the effort. The mindfulness, my granddaughter said it to me at like, she's 8. I just turned 8. I missed the turn to her soccer, where she was having her soccer game. She said, Nina, you're not being mindful. So a child 7 or 8 years old can get the concept. I said to her, what does it mean? And she told me pretty much what I had just said to you. So mindfulness in your everyday helps you stay focused. And yoga and all of it is so related. It makes your body calm. It gives you energy. It helps you be focused. It helps nourish your body. It brings about a sense of peace and calm. You feel grounded down into the earth so that you're strong and steady. And I mean, yoga, the way I teach it, there's a lot of visualizations also. So thinking about a tree's roots that go down into the earth, grounding you, next to a river where there's a flow of water. Just those two elements are wonderful for a practice, because we need to be grounded during this, but we want to not get too stuck. So the water element really helps you to flow.
There's a good place to practice mindfulness.
Where? Oh, well, I personally love practicing outside, and we have been doing that at Hope Floats, but unfortunately we'll do it into October until it gets too cold. But outside is a wonderful place, but you do have to find a place that is, I sort of think of Hope Floats location inside, even, it's almost like a sanctuary. It's a lovely spot surrounded by trees. So nature can be a huge part of this, because nature is healing. And so I feel like that's a huge piece of it.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Well, unfortunately, our time is limited, but these are good points to make. And yes, I think we could all use some time just to take a break, go outside, walk around, be in the moment, be firmly planted, and de-stress. So thank you very much for your comments. And your yoga classes are wonderful. And Hope Floats, again, is a tremendous asset to our community, as well as you, Claire. Thank you so much for your time and your information. Appreciate it. So please know that the Board of Health here in Kingston is here for you. We do have a website that we ask you to look at on a regular basis. It does have information about resources for mental health issues that you might be suffering during this pandemic. Phone numbers for a domestic violence line, suicide prevention, as well as resources for where to be tested for COVID, and a number of other items. Also, do know that we now have an article, a monthly article in the Kingston Reporter that's called Healthy Kingston Clipboard. And we basically do an outline of this program. So all the wonderful suggestions that were given by Ms. Walsh and Ms. Glaviano will be in there, so that you can refer to them on a regular basis. So with that said, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you next month.